let's unpack this. We're diving deep today into a story that truly flips the script on what you might expect from a global industry leader. Imagine a company that many initially dismissed, maybe even saw as a bit of a copycat, a speculative long shot.
Right.
But somehow managed to climb to the very top, becoming a giant in the electric vehicle space. This is the story of BYD.
It's a fascinating trajectory, really. BYD began its life primarily focused on battery manufacturing, almost entirely behind the scenes, you could say, and has transformed itself into the world's largest producer of electric vehicles, or, well, NEVs, which stands for New Energy Vehicle.
Ah, right. That covers the pure electrics and the plug-in hybrids.
Exactly, both. And our guide for this deep dive is a compelling excerpt from a YouTube documentary that meticulously traces their remarkable journey.
So our mission today is to get past the headlines, the skepticism, those initial perceptions. We want to understand the real story of BYD, peeling back the layers to see the difficult path walked by his founder, Wang Chuanfu, and the company he built. Using this source material, we'll explore the key moments that define their, well, unlikely rise.
Right from the start, the perception was challenging. For many Western investors, particularly in the early days, BYD felt like a speculative venture.
Like a gamble.
Pretty much, yeah. Almost like gambling on potential rather than investing in established value. And competitors didn't just underestimate them, they often openly scoffed.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You heard accusations of copying designs, concerns about manufacturing quality, worries about market overcapacity, talk of aggressive, cutthroat tactics, and that infamous quote sometimes reported as, "demolish the old legends."
Which, as you hinted, has had different interpretations, but certainly landed like a bold, almost aggressive statement on the global stage.
It did. Very bold.
But it highlights that initial, often negative view BYD faced. So we're going to trace how they navigated all of that, from what seemed like the absolute bottom to becoming this dominant global force.
It really is quite a leap from those humble, incredibly difficult beginnings.
So where does this extraordinary story truly begin? Our source takes us back all the way to China in 1966.
1966, yeah. Think about that context. It was right during the tumultuous period of the Cultural Revolution.
Right.
China was still profoundly scarred, struggling to recover from the immense devastation of the Second World War, followed by the brutal Civil War, and then compounded by years of terrible famine. The source paints a stark picture, specifically pointing out Anhui province as one of the poorest areas in the country, particularly hard-hit and left impoverished by that famine.
And this is the precise setting where Wang Chuanfu was born on April 8th, 1966, into this environment of intense, pervasive poverty in Anhui.
Exactly.
The source describes his family dynamic, which sounds incredibly challenging by any standard. A mother who was a farmer and housewife, a father who was a carpenter, and 8 children crammed into a small basic home.
8 children.
All needing to be fed and cared for. Yet, despite the sheer hardship, the source notes Wang's own memory of his childhood is surprisingly poignant. That they were poor, yes, but he remembers being happy.
That memory speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About the resilience and values within that family unit, no doubt shaped significantly by his father. The source mentions his father wasn't a highly educated man, but he instilled fundamental, enduring values in his children. Honesty, trustworthiness, hard work, and kindness.
Those core values.
Yeah, and Wang watching his father work as a carpenter, building things meticulously by hand, piece by piece, that could very well have been an early subtle inspiration, planting a seed of ingenuity and a deep understanding of building something substantial from scratch through sheer effort.
But this already difficult life was soon marked by profound tragedy. When Wang was just 13 years old, his father received a devastating diagnosis: liver cancer.
Just 13.
This meant he could no longer work, could no longer provide for his already struggling family. The source describes the heartbreak of watching their father weaken, the family's desperate struggle to cope, and his eventual succumbing to the disease, leaving a gaping hole in their lives and their ability to survive.
This death created an immediate, overwhelming disaster for the family. With the main provider gone, facing crippling poverty, they were under immense pressure to simply survive.
How did they manage?
Well, the source recounts how 5 older sisters, feeling the crushing weight of responsibility and the need to ease the financial burden, felt compelled to marry quickly.
Wow, so young.
Imagine the sacrifice those young women made, potentially giving up their own dreams or choices just to help the family unit. Wang's 18-year-old brother had to quit school immediately,
Cut his education short.
ending his education abruptly to find any job he could to bring in money. And most heartbreakingly, the youngest sister, tragically unable to be cared for financially by the struggling siblings, had to go into foster care.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Separated from the family.
Yeah, separated during a time of immense grief and uncertainty. The family was, in essence, fractured and torn apart by this loss and the resulting inescapable poverty.
It's a stark, painful picture of the devastating impact of poverty and tragedy on a family. Seeing this collapse, Wang had a critical initial realization.
What was that?
His best chance, perhaps his only realistic chance to help his shattered family, to pull them out of this spiraling hardship, was to focus intensely on his studies and get into a vocational high school.
Ah, okay, a path to a job.
Exactly. Such a school offered a path to a secure state job, a lifeline out of the crushing poverty they were facing. So he dedicated himself, applied himself rigorously, aiming squarely for this seemingly distant goal.
And then, just 2 years later, as if fate were testing them again, disaster struck a second time.
Not again.
His mother, who had stoically stepped into the role of main breadwinner after his father's death, collapsed while working tirelessly in the fields. The source tells us she passed away before she could even reach the hospital.
Oh, how awful. So sudden.
An agonizingly swift and final blow.
And the timing was just devastating, almost unbelievably cruel. The source describes Wang receiving this news when he was literally halfway through his middle school graduation exams.
No, the exams for vocational school.
The very exams meant to open the door to that vocational school, that path to security. Can you even imagine the panic, the shock, the immediate loss of focus?
Impossible.
He ran home in a daze, abandoning the exams entirely, and in that moment, lost his chance for admission to that crucial vocational school, jeopardizing the very future he was desperately trying to build for his family.
It's absolutely heartbreaking. Losing both parents at such a tender age and at such a critical juncture in his young life. After his mother's death, his older brother, who had recently started his own family and moved in with his wife, became his guardian.
So he had some support at least.
Yes, but Wang, witnessing the burden his brother was already carrying, felt a profound sense of responsibility. His initial thought in his grief and desperation was to drop out of school entirely. Find work immediately to earn money and not be a further financial burden on his brother and sister-in-law who were just starting their own lives together.
But his brother and sister-in-law had a very different, fiercely protective reaction. The source says they were angry when they heard Wang's plan to drop out.
Angry, not just sad.
Angry. They adamantly refused to let him, their voice filled with insistence that he must finish his studies, that he must not separate himself from the family, that keeping the family unit together was paramount.
Wow, that's powerful.
And this is where we see the immense, truly profound sacrifice they made. His brother and sister-in-law were working incredibly hard, running a small, likely struggling business.
Trying to make ends meet.
But they scraped together a meager 10 yuan each week, barely enough for basic necessities at the time, just to support Wang and keep him in school.
10 yuan a week. That's nothing. How did they manage?
The source provides a specific, incredibly powerful example that really underscores the depth of their commitment.
Oh.
One week, the sister-in-law simply couldn't find the money. So, driven by her determination, she went door to door, borrowing money from anyone she could and even selling her own jewelry, her precious personal possessions.
Just our jewelry.
Just to get enough for Wang to get through another week of school. That level of sacrifice, born out of love and loyalty, is truly extraordinary.
It really puts into perspective the weight of their support, and the culmination, the direct payoff for that immense sacrifice came in 1983.
Did it work out?
All their effort, their struggle, their belief wasn't in vain. Wang was accepted into Central South University to study metallurgical physical chemistry.
University, fantastic.
The source emphatically calls this moment something that would fundamentally change his life forever, the true turning point away from the shadow of poverty.
Which it undeniably did. It was the crucial door that opened, leading him out of that intense poverty and into a world of opportunity, a world of higher education and potential, all made possible by his family's extraordinary, unwavering support and sacrifice.
And that deep family support didn't end when he left for university. Our source tells us that his elder brother and sister-in-law, overflowing with pride and celebration at his university acceptance, gave him their most treasured possession, their wedding present.
What was it?
A precious Shanghai brand timepiece. And demonstrating their continued commitment to keeping the family bond strong despite the distance, they told him they would actually relocate their small business near the university just to be closer and continue supporting him.
They moved their business just to be near him.
Yeah. Keeping that family unit close and reinforcing that bond was clearly an absolute priority for them, a cornerstone of their values.
Amazing.
And at university, surrounded by new possibilities, Wang seems to have blossomed considerably. The source notes he became more outgoing, more engaged in campus life, joining the Communist Party, and even earning the rather charming title of dance master among his peers.
Dance master.
Apparently so. Yet, and this is crucial, he remained deeply devoted to his family, returning on weekends to help out in their small shop, never forgetting the sacrifices they had made.
Never forgot where he came from.
Exactly. This wasn't just about personal advancement. It was intrinsically linked to lifting up the family who had supported him.
His academic and career ascent from that point continued rapidly, almost effortlessly, it seems. In 1987, after graduating, he landed a highly coveted postgraduate position at the prestigious Beijing General Research Institute for Non-Ferrous Metals.
Okay, big step up.
His excellence and sharp intellect there quickly propelled him up the ranks, leading to him becoming the Institute's executive officer, a huge achievement by any measure, especially for someone from his background, securing a significant position within the state apparatus.
From there, his growing expertise in metallurgy and non-ferrous metals, particularly materials used in batteries, led directly to a key management role that would prove pivotal.
What was that?
He was appointed general manager of a new battery manufacturing joint venture, a partnership between his institute and the large state-owned Base Steel Group. This venture was strategically located in Shenzhen.
Ah, Shenzhen, the Special Economic Zone.
Exactly. China's first special economic zone, a designated area specifically created to foster rapid industrial and economic growth, making it a dynamic hub for burgeoning industry and innovation.
And it was in this key role, managing a battery company situated in this rapidly developing zone, that he identified what he saw as a massive, almost overlooked opportunity.
Okay, what did he spot?
The following year, he read an article detailing how the Japanese battery industry, which was dominant globally at the time, was beginning to abandon the production of nickel-cadmium batteries.
Why were they doing that?
Largely due to growing environmental concerns about the toxic materials used. Wang, with his sharp business acumen and technical background, had the immediate insight to see this retreat not as a problem, but as a big opportunity for his new state-backed company.
He saw a significant vacuum opening up in the global market, a chance for a new player to step in where established giants were consciously retreating.
Makes sense.
But despite being the general manager, the leader of this joint venture, his ideas for aggressively seizing this opportunity for investing and expanding into this space were surprisingly dismissed by his colleagues and superiors within the state-owned structure.
Really? Even as the GM?
Yeah. They likely favored a more cautious, less ambitious approach. It must have been incredibly frustrating being in a position of leadership but feeling constrained.
I can imagine.
The source describes Wang's internal conflict at this time, a period of significant personal reflection. On one hand, he had achieved immense stability. His brother and sister-in-law's lives were improving thanks to his success.
The family was doing better.
Exactly. He had recently married, and his wife was expecting their first child. A secure, high-ranking position within a state enterprise offered that undeniable stability, the kind of security his family had never known.
The safe path.
Right. But on the other hand, he felt a powerful, almost irresistible pull, an inner conviction, feeling compelled to follow his vision for the battery market, to pursue this opportunity that others couldn't or wouldn't see.
That entrepreneurial itch.
That intense internal drive, that belief in his own vision, ultimately won out. Despite the security he had worked so hard to achieve, despite the personal ties to stability with his new family, he made a truly bold, almost unthinkable decision at the time.
What did he do?
To resign from his secure, high-ranking position within the state system and start his own private battery company.
Wow. He just walked away.
He did. The source notes pointedly that this was a decision he would soon come to question as the challenges immediately became apparent.
Because, as you highlighted and as the source immediately points out, after making that incredibly bold decision to strike out on his own and start his own company, Wang faced this single, huge, immediate, and seemingly insurmountable problem that plagues almost every startup.
Let me guess. Money.
Exactly. He had absolutely no capital. Banks and traditional investors, wary of a private venture led by someone leaving the state system, turned him down cold.
Ouch.
Leading him to doubt if he had made a catastrophic mistake, if he had sacrificed everything for a pipe dream.
But just as before, in his moment of deepest need, his family came to his aid again, demonstrating that powerful bond and belief.
His brother again.
Not his brother this time, but his cousin, who was a successful businessman, stepped forward and lent him a substantial amount, 2.5 million yuan.
That's a lot of money.
A huge personal risk for the cousin. And his cousin's friend, hearing about Wang's vision and impressed by his conviction and track record, decided to invest his entire life savings into the venture.
His life savings. Wow. That's belief.
This was the absolutely crucial seed money, fueled by trust and personal connection, that allowed BYD to be born.
So with this critical initial funding secured through family and friends, on November 18th, 1994, they officially founded Yadi Electronics.
Yadi, not BYD yet.
Not yet. The initial company name came simply from the road they were located on in Shenzhen. Their base was a modest workshop, literally located at the Metallurgical Academy where Wang had previously worked.
Back where he started, sort of.
They later made a pragmatic, strategic decision to change the name to BYD, or BYD, which they apparently chose specifically so they would be listed higher up in company indexes and directories.
Clever. Just for visibility.
A simple tactic. The initial startup conditions were incredibly difficult, reflecting the shoestring budget and the need to conserve capital at all costs.
I bet. How bad was it?
The source vividly describes employees sleeping side by side on makeshift beds within the workshop itself to save on housing costs.
Sleeping in the workshop? Seriously?
Seriously. And Wang himself embodied this dedication, working tirelessly, consuming himself with getting the company off the ground, so much so that he even tragically missed the birth of his daughter.
Missed the birth of his child? That's intense dedication. Or maybe just...
This level of sacrifice was demanded of everyone, including the founder. Their early innovation strategy sounds incredibly pragmatic, born out of necessity.
How did they innovate with no money?
Since they couldn't afford expensive, state-of-the-art R&D labs or licensing fees initially, they managed to create their own products and accelerate their learning curve by meticulously reading publicly available patent applications from competitors.
Okay.
And then reverse engineering their batteries. They essentially learned by carefully deconstructing and understanding what the leading players had already built and patented.
So taking things apart again? Like his dad? Maybe? But with batteries?
Maybe. Learn by doing, by understanding the pieces. But even with that ingenuity, they still faced a huge fundamental problem that threatened the company's very existence right from the start.
What now?
They simply couldn't afford the extensive automated production lines that their established global competitors used, even with the initial investments they had secured. Buying that kind of machinery was simply out of reach.
Right, that automation costs a fortune.
This is where Wang had a truly brilliant counterintuitive breakthrough, applying what the source calls first principles thinking.
Okay, break that down.
Instead of just accepting the industry standard that automated production was the only way to be competitive, he broke the problem down to its absolute basics. He did a fundamental calculation, comparing the cost of those expensive automated robots amortized over a theoretical production run.
Right.
Directly against the cost of using manual labor to perform the exact same tasks.
Fox, what did he find?
And his calculation revealed something crucial, something that completely went against conventional manufacturing wisdom prevalent in developed countries like Japan or Europe. By strategically leveraging China's abundant labor force, which was significantly cheaper than labor in other manufacturing hubs.
The labor cost difference.
Exactly. He realized he could create a manual-intensive production line that wasn't just cheaper upfront to set up, but was actually more cost-effective over the production run than his competitors' expensive automated lines.
So using people instead of robots was actually cheaper overall.
In that specific context, yes. It was a direct, powerful cost advantage derived specifically from his context and a willingness to think differently.
And they amplified this cost-saving and efficiency advantage by adopting a radical degree of vertical integration from day one.
What does that mean here? Making everything themselves.
Pretty much. The source note they decided to make their own machines and manufacturing equipment rather than buying it off the shelf from external suppliers.
They built their own factory machines.
Yes. This meant they controlled more and more of the entire production process internally. This strategy, while challenging, not only saved money, but gave them incredible flexibility and control over their manufacturing that traditional companies often didn't have.
Right, less reliance on others.
A trait that the source points out would become absolutely essential in their future ventures beyond batteries.
This unique, incredibly cost-effective, and vertically integrated approach paid off dramatically and rapidly. With just over 1 million yuan in initial investment, a tiny amount compared to what established players spent.
1 million yuan. Peanuts. relatively speaking.
Wang established a production line that could produce 4,000 nickel-cadmium batteries daily, achieving significant volume almost immediately.
4,000 a day from that small investment. Impressive.
And the growth that followed was nothing short of explosive. By 1997, just 3 years after founding the company in that modest workshop, BYD had already become China's largest battery manufacturer.
3 years. Wow.
Selling an astonishing 150 million batteries. The source rightly calls this an enormous achievement for a Chinese startup in the mid-90s, demonstrating their ability to scale rapidly using their unique model.
But even with that domestic dominance, they hit the next major hurdle, the international customer problem.
Breaking into global markets.
Exactly. They had developed a competitive, incredibly cost-effective product, but the big international customers, the global electronics giants like Motorola, Nokia, and others, had never heard of this company called BYD operating out of Shenzhen.
No brand recognition.
Yeah, none. They simply didn't have the brand recognition or the inherent trust to compete for those massive international orders.
So Wang, demonstrating his strategic thinking, made another shrewd move. He needed someone relentless to break through. He sent his top sales manager, Stella
Lee,
to the headquarters of Motorola in Georgia in the United States. The source paints a vivid picture of Stella showing up, with admittedly limited English at the time, but armed with a box full of BYD batteries.
Just turns up with batteries.
Determined to pitch them as a superior, cheaper supplier, persistently trying to get a meeting.
Let's see, how did that go?
Initially, the source says, Motorola's procurement people were understandably irritated by her persistence. They likely got countless unsolicited pitches.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But over time, the source highlights they were deeply impressed by her sheer relentlessness, her unwavering determination and belief in the product.
She just wouldn't give up.
Exactly. Her persistence eventually convinced Motorola to give BYD a chance to take a risk and test their batteries for potential use.
And Stella Lei's success in landing that crucial first international customer clearly impressed Wang too. The source notes that she would later rise through the ranks and be appointed as the CEO of BYD Americas.
So that persistence paid off for her personally too.
Absolutely. A direct testament to the impact of her early pioneering sales efforts on the global stage. With Motorola finally on board, the floodgates open, and big international customers started rolling in, validating BYD's quality and cost advantage.
So things are looking up. International success.
Yes, this international success paved the way for further rapid growth and significant investment. By 2002, just 8 years after founding, BYD was set to be listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange.
Going public, a huge step.
A major step for a Chinese private company at the time. But before the listing, a potential issue arose among his early partners and executives.
Oh, what kind of issue?
Since their initial agreements about ownership and share distribution were largely oral, based on trust rather than formal contracts.
Handshake deals, basically.
Pretty much. Concerns about how the shares would be divided surfaced as the listing approached, and immense wealth was suddenly on the table.
Oh, yeah. Money changes things. How did Wang handle it?
Wang's response was simple, powerful, and spoke volumes about his core values, the values he had learned from his father and his family's sacrifices. What was said will be done.
Straightforward trust.
The source emphasizes that he valued loyalty and trust above all else, remembering the sacrifices made by his family and those early colleagues who had believed in him when he had nothing, who had slept on makeshift beds in the workshop.
He remembered the struggle.
And he absolutely backed that up with action. The source notes that the 34 original executives who had been with him from the incredibly difficult, challenging beginnings,
The ones who slept in the work.
those very ones, who had shared the hardship and believed in the vision, received a significant 22% of the company's shares upon the listing. The result: every single one of them became a millionaire.
Wow. Rewarded loyalty.
It was a direct, tangible reward for their loyalty, sacrifice, and belief, reinforcing that core cultural value within the company.
By 2003, BYD's ascent in the global battery world was complete. They had not only caught up, but had surpassed Japan's Sanyo, a long-established giant,
Beat the Japanese giants.
to become the world's largest manufacturer of rechargeable batteries.
That is truly an enormous achievement. Going from a startup in a modest workshop with no capital to global industry leadership in just 9 years, incredible.
An incredible testament to their unique model and Wang's vision. But the source notes that even at this pinnacle of battery success, at the very top of one industry, Wang felt a persistent, growing unease.
Unease, why? He'd made it.
He wasn't content. His restless mind had started looking with great interest at another, even larger and more complex, booming industry: automobiles.
Cars. from batteries to cars.
The source teases that his next move would be even bolder and would attempt to transform one of the biggest manufacturing industries on the planet.
And that move, just as predicted, was controversial, bordering on audacious, to say the least. Wang decided he wanted BYD to venture into the automobile manufacturing industry.
Okay, that is a leap.
The source says when he shared this idea with his trusted colleagues and investors, their reaction was almost universal and immediate. They all thought he had, quote, lost it.
Lost it. Strong reaction.
And their reaction is entirely understandable given the context the source provides. Wang Chuanfu, the battery expert, knew virtually nothing about the incredibly complex process of designing and manufacturing cars.
He didn't even have a driver's license.
Exactly. He didn't even have a driver's license. It seemed like madness to leap into a completely unrelated, established, highly competitive, and incredibly capital-intensive industry from a position of dominance in another, seemingly abandoning his core strength.
But Wang was resolute. The source states he wasn't swayed. He dismissed the private counsel and worried advice of his senior executives and, perhaps more dangerously, ignored threats and concerns from investment firms who vehemently opposed the idea.
Investment firms threatened him.
Yeah, seeing it as a reckless dilution of the company's value and focus. He was determined to pursue this new, controversial vision.
His first concrete step into the automotive world was an acquisition. In January 2003, BYD acquired a 77% stake in Qinchuan Automobile for 270 million yuan.
Qinchuan Auto. Never heard of them.
They were a small car manufacturer in China that had produced a rather basic, cheap sedan called the Flyer, essentially a collaboration using some components from Suzuki. This acquisition gave BYD a toehold, a basic license, and a small manufacturing base.
Okay, a starting point. How did the market react?
The market reaction to this news was immediate and brutal, a stark reflection of the skepticism the move generated. The announcement that BYD was entering the car business sent BYD's stock price plummeting on the Hong Kong exchange, wiping out a staggering 2.7 billion Hong Kong dollars in market value in just 2 days.
2.7 billion. Ouch. Investors hated it.
Clearly did not share or understand Wang's vision for this ambitious automotive venture. They saw it as a disastrous misstep. After the acquisition, BYD continued to sell the existing basic Flyer sedan under their own brand, while simultaneously trying desperately to develop new models from scratch.
So selling the old car while figuring out the new ones.
Right. And their early design struggles were painfully evident. The source mentions that the first car badge they came up with was so similar to BMW's distinctive logo that it caused issues.
Looked like a BMW logo. Seriously.
And eventually forced them to change it after only a few years on the market, a small but telling sign of their inexperience.
And the sales of the inherited Flyer were not going well. It was an outdated, uninspiring car. Wang quickly realized they needed something different.
What did he do?
He scrapped a subsequent new model they had developed that wasn't well received by dealers and customers, and decided on a pragmatic, low-risk approach for their next attempt. Create something that looked and felt more familiar to Chinese consumers.
Ah, something they recognized.
Something they were already buying. This pragmatic decision led directly to the launch of the BYD F3 in September 2005.
The F3. Okay. What was special about it?
The source highlights its striking, close resemblance to a Toyota Corolla, one of the best-selling and most trusted cars globally.
Looked like a Corolla, the copycat thing again?
The similarity wasn't just superficial. The source notes that many parts between the BYD F3 and the Toyota Corolla were actually interchangeable. This was clearly BYD applying their earlier battery strategy of learning from and adapting established, successful models.
And Wang applied the core manufacturing strategy that had worked so brilliantly in batteries to car production. He mirrored his battery manufacturing method by intentionally creating production lines that relied extensively on manual labor rather than expensive automation.
The same trick. Use cheap labor instead of robots.
The source states that this allowed him to cut manufacturing costs significantly compared to competitors using automated assembly lines. The result, they could price the BYD F3 incredibly aggressively at roughly half the cost of a comparable Toyota Corolla in China.
Half the price. That's huge.
This disruptive price point, combined with a design that felt familiar and trustworthy to consumers, resonated strongly. The source notes consumers responded well, seeing it as incredible value.
So it worked.
F3 sales exploded, surpassing 100,000 units within a year, a milestone reached faster than any other domestic Chinese car brand at that time.
Wow. Okay, that strategy paid off.
Building on this success, BYD rapidly followed up by launching the F3R and F6 models, which the source says bore similarly striking resemblances to popular General Motors and other Toyota models, leveraging the same low-cost, manual-intensive approach.
So more familiar-looking cars at low prices.
Exactly. Amidst this rapid expansion, on August 9, 2007, BYD officially opened its massive new Pingshan base in Shenzhen. This wasn't just a typical factory.
It was different.
The source describes it as a comprehensive complex that included extensive housing, dining halls, and other amenities specifically for the workers. It vividly reflected Wang's unique, worker-centric leadership style that he had established from the beginning.
Housing for the workers right there.
Yeah. The source highlights Wang's difference from most corporate CEOs. He chose to live within the Pingshan complex alongside his workers and was frequently seen eating meals in the communal dining halls with them.
He lived and ate with the workers.
In a CNN interview quoted in the source, Wang explained his philosophy directly. Due to work requirements, I became the chairman, but after work, we are all equal. This is our culture.
After work, we were all equal. That's quite a statement.
It's a powerful statement about fostering a sense of equality, shared purpose, and loyalty that mirrored his own life experience and the sacrifices of his family and early colleagues.
It really does align with that deep-seated value of loyalty and shared struggle we saw earlier. At that Pingshan base opening event, feeling confident after the F3 success, Wang Chuanfu made incredibly bold public declarations about BYD's future goals for the automotive world.
What did he say?
To become China's #1 car manufacturer by 2015, and, even more ambitiously, a world leader in automobiles by 2025.
Whoa, big goals. China, #1 by 2015, world leader by 2025.
Very ambitious. He was so confident in the direction they were heading, so convinced they were on the right path, that he decided BYD would participate in the prestigious Detroit Auto Show in 2008.
Taking the show on the road, Detroit.
Aiming to step onto the global automotive stage and announce their intentions to the world. But the source describes his international debut as, frankly, a bit of a debacle.
A debacle, how so?
The fundamental problem was, unlike established car brands from the US, Europe, or Japan, with decades of history, billions spent on marketing, and loyal fan bases.
Right, the legacy brands.
BYD lacked a compelling story, a recognized brand identity, or any history for a global audience. In Detroit, virtually no one knew what BYD even stood for or who they were.
So just, who are these guys?
Exactly. The source mentions the cynical joke circulating that it could stand for "Bring Your Dollars." After internal deliberation, the company officially adopted "Build Your Dreams" as their slogan.
Build your dreams. Okay, where did that come from?
The source suggests this wasn't just corporate branding, but possibly a deeper reflection of Wang's engineering ethos and work ethic. Perhaps even a subtle, personal tribute to his carpenter father, who built things with his hands and instilled the value of hard work and aspiration.
Connecting back to his father. That makes sense.
But despite the symbolic slogan, they were clearly not ready for the intense scrutiny of the international spotlight. Everything about the presentation felt rushed and amateurish.
What went wrong specifically?
The source notes the car brochure wasn't properly translated, leading to awkward and often mocked phrasing that journalists seized upon. The quote from the brochure is famously bad. "Adopt the reclaimed stuff, could be recycled."
Adopt the reclaimed stuff. What does that even mean? Bad translation of recycled materials.
Must be. Journalists also openly mocked the car's appearance, pointing out that the F3's front looked like a Toyota Corolla, while the back looked like a Chevrolet Optra.
Oof. Reinforcing the copycat image again.
Others filmed basic quality issues on the show floor, like car doors not shutting correctly. The source quotes one journalist's brutally critical video description after the show. "Welcome to Detroit. Now come back when you're ready."
Ouch. Humiliating.
It was a humiliating, rough, and public introduction to the global automotive stage. However, the source makes a crucial point that amid this public embarrassment, some forward-thinking car experts and industry observers did take notice of something significant hidden beneath the surface issues.
Oh, what did they see?
BYD was actually planning to bring some of the world's very first hybrid electric and fully electric car models to market in the near future.
The EV angle.
Unlike many established American brands that were still struggling to develop credible electric vehicle plans or show prototypes, this indicated a potential edge BYD had been quietly developing.
That same year, 2008, just as BYD stumbled onto the global stage, Tesla launched its first production car, the Roadster.
Right, Tesla enters the picture.
While a low-volume sports car, it immediately received praise for its impressive range and speed for an EV at the time. The source notes this gave Tesla an immediate leg up, establishing an image of high-quality, high-performance, desirable electric vehicles right from the start,
Setting a high bar.
creating a stark contrast with BYD's initial image of low-cost, basic, and seemingly copied gasoline cars.
But despite the Detroit struggles, the public ridicule, and Tesla's slick emergence, the source ends this section on a note of unexpected hope, stating that all was not lost for the young Chinese company.
How so?
Amidst the chaos, they had piqued the interest of a key American investor, someone who looked past the initial presentation and saw the underlying potential.
And that key American investor, renowned globally for his wisdom and long-term perspective, was Charlie Munger.
Munger from Berkshire Hathaway.
Exactly. The vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's partner. The source describes how Munger, known for spotting value and unconventional opportunities, was genuinely impressed by BYD's battery technology and its potential move into EVs.
He saw the battery potential.
He became convinced and, in turn, persuaded Warren Buffett, the chairman himself, to take a closer look at this unusual Chinese company.
So Munger convinced Buffett.
This led to a landmark investment. In 2008, Berkshire Hathaway, through its subsidiary Mid-American Energy, made a significant investment. $230 million for a 10% stake in BYD.
$230 million. That's a serious vote of confidence.
The source notes the immense impact of this investment, sending BYD's stock price soaring and instantly catapulting Wang Chuanfu into the ranks of China's wealthiest individuals, with a fortune estimated at 35 billion yuan at the time.
Billionaire overnight almost.
The investment was more than just financial. It was a massive validation, a public endorsement from one of the most respected investors in the world. It validated Wang's long-held belief in the potential of battery technology and the future of electric vehicles.
Huge boost.
Riding this wave of newfound investor confidence and public profile, BYD quickly launched its first pure electric vehicle, the E6, in 2009, signaling their serious intent in the EV space.
The E6, their first pure EV. Things are looking up now, right?
You'd think so. But in the excitement and conviction of this new direction, fully focused on electric vehicles validated by Buffett and Munger, the source says Wang made a critical, and as it turned out, potentially fatal mistake.
Oh no. What did he do wrong?
Believing the future was entirely electric and wanting to accelerate the transition, he drastically slashed investments and resources dedicated to BYD's traditional gasoline car models.
Cut funding for the gas cars. But weren't those still selling?
Exactly. The models that were still making up the bulk of their sales and funding the EV development. This decision had severe, almost immediate consequences. It completely undermined their existing business model and sent the company into a downward spiral.
How did it spiral?
Car dealerships, which relied on selling gasoline cars to stay afloat, saw BYD pulling back investment and abandoning the market, and they began to abandon BYD in droves, crippling their distribution network.
The dealerships left. That's bad.
Very bad. The financial impact was stark and rapid. In 2010, BYD's revenue declined by 8% compared to the previous quarter, and crucially, net profits plummeted by an alarming 58%.
Profits down 58%. Whoa.
The following year was even worse, a financial bloodbath, with profits nosediving by a staggering 88.6% in the first half alone. The company was facing a full-blown financial crisis.
Nearly 90% drop. That's catastrophic.
This severe financial distress triggered a wave of negative consequences across the company. There were mass resignations of key personnel, widespread layoffs impacting thousands of workers.
Layoffs, resignations. Morale must have tanked.
And a surge in product quality issues across their remaining car lines, further damaging the brand's already shaky reputation in the automotive market.
Quality problems too. It's all falling apart.
And to rub salt in the wound during this incredibly difficult time for BYD, the source describes a moment that perfectly captured their struggles compared to their emerging competitor. Elon Musk was asked about BYD during a live television interview in the United States.
Musk again. What did he say this time?
While standing proudly next to his latest electric car. The interviewer mentioned Warren Buffett's recent investment in BYD, framing it as a potential competitor. And Musk's reaction, broadcast globally, was to simply start laughing.
He laughed on TV.
Yeah. The source quotes Musk's dismissive reply, "Have you seen their car? Here he is trying to compete." It was a public, high-profile dismissal that added insult to injury during what the source calls a difficult time for BYD and Wang Chuanfu personally.
That's brutal. Publicly mocked by a competitor.
It underscored how far BYD still had to go and how little respect they commanded from key players. The source highlights that Wang's response to this crisis, his next crucial decision, would determine the company's very survival.
That period from roughly 2010 to 2012 was clearly rock bottom for BYD's automotive ambitions. The quality issues were rampant, threatening to permanently brand BYD as a manufacturer of cheap, unreliable products.
Yeah, that reputation is hard to shake.
Wang realized with absolute clarity that he had to fundamentally rethink their approach to car manufacturing and quality if the company was to survive and ever hope to achieve his ambitious goals.
The source provides a fantastic, almost legendary anecdote that perfectly illustrates Wang's drastic determination to remedy the quality issues and instill a new standard.
Oh yeah? What happened?
Frustrated by the perceived gap between BYD's cars and the world's best, he went to a local Mercedes-Benz dealer and bought the most premium car on the lot, a brand new S-Class luxury sedan.
Bought an S-Class. Okay.
He then had it delivered directly to the BYD R&D department. Gathering his top engineers around the pristine luxury vehicle, he gave them a simple start command. Here you go. Tear it apart.
Tear apart a brand new Mercedes S-Class.
The engineers, understandably stunned and hesitant at the sight of a brand new, incredibly expensive Mercedes, reportedly pushed back, saying, "But Mr. Wang, it is your car. It is brand new."
Yeah, I wouldn't want to scratch it either.
Wang's response, demonstrating his unwavering resolve and willingness to literally destroy value to learn, was iconic. He took his keys, walked up to the gleaming S-Class, and deliberately made a huge, deep scratch down the side of a brand new car.
He scratched his own brand new Mercedes.
Then he simply stated, "Well, now it's not new anymore. Tear it apart." It sent a powerful, undeniable message about his commitment to understanding and matching the quality of the world's best, no matter the cost or initial discomfort.
Wow, that's a statement. Learn from the best, even if it hurts.
It was a dramatic, unforgettable way to signal a fundamental shift in priorities and culture within the company. And in a crucial show of faith and support during the struggling period, Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett.
Buffett and Munger again.
Despite the financial setbacks and public ridicule BYD was facing, chose to visit Wang and the company in China. The source calls this a smart move, a deliberate public gesture to signal to the market, to BYD's employees, and especially to Wang himself, that their prominent investors were still behind him.
Showing public support when things were tough. That's big.
Reaffirming their long-term belief when many others were doubting. Despite the continued struggles and quality perceptions surrounding their gasoline cars during this period, the source notes that BYD was quietly finding growing success in the new energy vehicle space.
The NEVs were still doing okay?
They're hybrid and pure electric models,
Right.
yeah. While the traditional market was collapsing for them, their NEV sales were steadily climbing. In 2015, for example, they sold an impressive 61,722 NEVs.
60,000 NEVs.
Not bad. A significant number that showed their pivot wasn't entirely fruitless. These numbers, though modest by global standards, were enough to allow BYD to claim an 11% share of the global NEV market in 2015.
11% globally.
Making them the #1 NEV company in the world at that specific time based on total plug-in sales.
So #1 in NEVs even while struggling overall. Interesting.
This achievement, even if based on relatively low volumes compared to the traditional market, positioned them incredibly well for the future as the global focus began a shift towards electrification.
And the timing couldn't have been better. Around this same time, the Chinese government officially declared its strong support for the transition to electric vehicles, implementing policies and incentives to drive adoption.
Government support ticking in, that helps.
This government backing further aligned perfectly with BYD's emerging strength in NEVs, giving them a significant tailwind in their home market.
The source highlights the conscious evolution of BYD's brand image during this period, a clear effort to move away from the low-cost copycat perception.
How did they do that?
In 2016, they took a bold step by bringing on Oscar-winning Hollywood actor Leonardo DiCaprio as their brand ambassador.
Leo DiCaprio for BYD.
Yeah. This was a high-profile move that signaled the company's newfound confidence as a legitimate electric car manufacturer, a far cry from the ridiculed debut in Detroit years before.
Trying to boost that image. Did it work?
Well, 2016 is often described as a true turning point, a definitive comeback year for BYD after the earlier crisis. The source notes a dramatic 130% increase in NEV sales in the first half of that year alone.
130% increase. Wow.
A clear indication of rapid recovery and growth in the electric segment. They celebrated achieving an impressive 65% share of the plug-in hybrid market in China, demonstrating dominance in a key segment of the burgeoning NEV market.
Okay, so the comeback is real. Things were undeniably looking up.
Buoyed by domestic success, in 2017, they held a large ceremony at their electric bus factory in the USA, a facility established earlier. There, they announced ambitious plans to quadruple the factory floor space to significantly increase production capacity.
Expanding in the U.S. for buses.
Electric buses, yeah. The source states this expansion, particularly in the U.S., gave Wang renewed hope and confidence for eventually selling BYD cars in the lucrative U.S. market.
Aiming for the U.S. car market again.
Things were aligning, the future looked bright, but the source warns that disaster in a completely different form was just around the corner.
Oh, come on, not again. What now?
And indeed, just as things seemed stable, circumstances started to turn south again for BYD between 2017 and 2019, leading to another challenging downturn.
Why this time?
The primary reason the source identifies for this new downturn was a shift in Chinese government policy. In an effort to rationalize the rapidly growing EV market and weed out unprofitable EV companies that had sprung up,
Trying to clean up the market.
the government began significantly cutting the purchase subsidies they had been providing for electric vehicle buyers. While intended to mature the market, this abruptly changed the economics for many buyers and hit companies like BYD hard.
Cutting subsidies. That always hurts sales.
This reduction in government support directly impacted BYD's bottom line. Profits dropped significantly, falling to a mere 1.6 billion yuan in 2019.
Profits way down again.
The source quotes Wang Chuanfu describing this period starkly as the darkest moment for the company, even more challenging than the previous financial crisis. His goal, he stated simply, was from now on, the only goal was to survive.
Back to survival mode after all that progress.
It was a return to survival mode after years of growth and ambition. This internal struggle was happening while their main global competitor, Tesla, was soaring to new heights.
The Tesla comparison again.
The source notes that during this exact period, Tesla introduced its highly anticipated Model Y SUV to raving reviews, quickly gaining massive traction and becoming the biggest pure electric car company in the world based on market capitalization and increasingly sales volume.
Model Y was huge for Tesla.
Tesla also entered the prestigious Fortune 500 list, symbolizing its arrival as a major global corporation. The contrast between Tesla's ascent and BYD's struggle was stark.
Adding to BYD's woes and creating a significant competitive threat on their home turf, Tesla simultaneously started construction of a massive car factory in Shanghai, China.
The Gigafactory in Shanghai.
Yeah.
Right in BYD's backyard.
This Gigafactory, the source notes, threatened to potentially nullify BYD's edge over efficient manufacturing that relied on lower labor costs and vertical integration. Tesla was bringing its highly efficient automated production model directly into BYD's most important market.
Direct competition on manufacturing efficiency. Tough.
If that wasn't enough pressure, the source mentions that during this time, a new company, CATL, had risen rapidly to challenge BYD's long-held position as China's and increasingly the world's #1 battery supplier.
Competition in batteries, too. CATL.
Yeah. Competition was intensifying not only in the automotive sector, but also in their foundational battery business, hitting BYD on all fronts.
Attacked on both fronts, cars and batteries.
And then, the source says, when things couldn't seem to get any worse for the struggling company, they did, in a way no one could have predicted.
Don't tell me.
The COVID-19 pandemic was declared worldwide in early 2020.
COVID, yeah. That hit everyone.
Causing widespread lockdowns, closed international borders, and severe travel restrictions globally. The demand for cars plummeted everywhere. Few people were interested in buying vehicles during such uncertainty.
In China, the initial fear and chaos of the virus outbreak were compounded by a severe, immediate shortage of essential personal protection equipment like masks and hand sanitizers.
Right, the PPE shortage was critical early on.
Supply chains were broken, and there was widespread panic about accessing basic protection. The economic forecast for every industry, including automotive, was dire, predicting a sharp slowdown that made widespread layoffs seem like the only rational, smart choice for businesses desperately trying to conserve cash and survive.
Layoffs seemed inevitable for many.
But the source highlights Wang Chuanfu's unique leadership and connection to his workforce once again, distinguishing him from many corporate executives. He lived and ate with his workers. He knew their families.
That connection again.
He understood the potential devastation layoffs would cause in communities built around BYD's factories. His empathy and sense of responsibility fueled a strong desire to avoid mass layoffs if he could possibly find an alternative way to maintain the company's financial integrity and keep people employed.
So what did he do instead of layoffs?
So in a truly remarkable and decisive move, Wang made a strategic pivot that utilized BYD's core manufacturing expertise in an entirely unexpected way. He ordered 3,000 engineers.
3,000 engineers.
Redirecting them from car and battery development to rapidly refit production lines that typically made car components or batteries specifically to manufacture masks and hand sanitizers.
They started making masks just like that.
Leveraging their manufacturing speed and scale, BYD quickly transformed into the world's largest mass producer during the height of the pandemic crisis. It was an incredible feat of manufacturing agility, keeping workers employed, and addressing a critical societal need.
Wow. From cars to masks overnight almost. That's impressive agility.
And importantly, the source notes that during this intense public focus on pivoting to PPE production and surviving the immediate crisis, BYD was also secretly and relentlessly preparing their next big move in the automotive sector.
Working behind the scenes even then.
They knew the pandemic would eventually end, and when it did, they wanted to be ready. They wanted to have a little surprise waiting for their competitors, a surprise born out of those years of struggle and rethinking.
That surprise was significant game-changing innovation, particularly in their foundational area.
Batteries.
Back to batteries, what did they come up with?
The source reveals that behind the scenes, even during the darkest moment and the pandemic pivot, BYD's engineers had been quietly developing a new type of battery technology that would mark a new standard in the EV industry, the revolutionary blade battery.
The blade battery. Okay, what's revolutionary about it?
The core changes in the blade battery were twofold, focusing on both chemistry and structure. They made a decisive switch to lithium iron phosphate, or LFP chemistry.
LFP.
Right.
Known for safety, less for energy density traditionally.
Exactly. Think of LFP as a battery formula that is known for being incredibly stable and safe, much less prone to overheating or catching fire compared to some other battery chemistries, even if it historically offered slightly less energy density initially. On top of that, they completely remodeled the battery pack's physical structure.
How so?
Arranging the individual cells in a long, thin, space-efficient blade shape.
The blade structure. More space efficient.
This combination of LFP chemistry and the blade-like structure achieved a major breakthrough in battery safety, durability, and also allowed for better space utilization within the car's chassis.
Safety and space. Key advantages. How did they prove it?
To demonstrate this critical safety advantage, particularly relevant given public concerns about EV fires, BYD executed a brilliant PR masterstroke. They published a dramatic video demonstrating the results of a standard industry safety test called a nail puncture test.
The nail test. I think I saw that.
The video showed a nail puncturing a conventional lithium-ion battery, resulting in immediate flames and thermal runaway. In stark contrast, when the nail punctured the BYD blade battery, it had hardly any reaction, remaining stable and safe.
Wow. Visually very powerful. No fire versus fire.
This compelling demonstration directly capitalized on news reports and public anxieties about electric vehicles catching fire, directly addressing a major concern of positioning the blade battery, and by extension BYD's vehicles, as uniquely safe.
Smart marketing. Addressing fear head on.
But the innovation and preparation weren't limited to batteries. The source notes that during this same period, BYD's engineering and design teams were furiously busy developing entirely new car models.
New cars, too.
Specifically designed to definitively put an end to the perception of Chinese cars being merely bad copies of foreign designs.
Finally tackling that copycat image directly.
They publicly announced that they were developing a new line of vehicles designed by some of the world's top designers, signaling a serious investment in aesthetics and quality.
Hiring top global designers. That's a statement.
And they made their competitive target crystal clear. They explicitly stated they were coming after the #1 pure electric company in the world, Tesla, aiming to compete directly across multiple vehicle segments.
Calling out Tesla directly. Bold.
In late 2020, they launched the first and most prominent model from this new generation, the BYD Han.
The Han. Right, named after the dynasty.
Exactly. The source describes it as an electric luxury sedan, a major step up, with a level of style and sophistication that no BYD car had before. Importantly, the source notes that its premium, well-designed interior was perceived as even outshining those found in Tesla cars at the time.
Better interior than Tesla, that's a big claim.
Directly addressing a key area where Tesla had been criticized. The name Han itself was significant. Named after one of China's most powerful and prosperous dynasties, the source suggests it was chosen deliberately as a powerful statement of the country's progress, technological capability, and innovation in the modern automotive sector.
A symbol of Chinese advancement.
And BYD didn't stop with the Han. They rapidly expanded their lineup, releasing several impressive SUV and sports sedan models in quick succession.
Like the Tang, Song, Yuan is dynasty names again?
Precisely. Actively competing with almost every segment Tesla had to offer, with vehicles leveraging their blade battery and newfound design prowess.
So, a full lineup targeting Tesla. How did the market react?
The market response to this new generation of vehicles, particularly in China, was astonishing, leading to explosive sales growth. The source provides incredible numbers tracing their trajectory from 2020 to 2023.
Let's hear them.
Sales skyrocketed from 427,302 vehicles in 2020 to a staggering 3,024,417 in 2023.
Whoa. From 400,000 to over 3 million? In 3 years!
That's an astonishing 700% increase in just 3 years, a growth rate almost unprecedented in the automotive industry.
700%. That's insane growth.
With this immense game-changing success in their home market, BYD finally felt confident it was time for global expansion, a goal Wang had set way back in 2007. Their initial focus for this renewed global push was Europe.
Europe, okay, second attempt at the global stage, sort of. How did it go this time?
But an ugly surprise, or perhaps a harsh dose of reality, awaited them there. The source describes BYD attending the prestigious International Motor Show in Munich, Germany in 2023, arriving with great fanfare.
Munich show, big deal.
They aimed to make it clear their technology, particularly the blade battery, was now miles ahead of much of the established competition. They reiterated their commitment, having totally abandoned internal combustion engine car production the year before.
All in on electric now.
Now all in on electric. By this point, even their former detractor, Elon Musk, publicly acknowledged their progress, stating that BYD's cars were highly competitive.
Musk admitting they're competitive, times have changed.
A complete reversal of his earlier dismissive laughter. However, BYD's meteoric rise, particularly its dominance in the huge Chinese market, resulted in significant backlash and protectionist sentiment from Western media and governments.
The backlash, the Chinese EV invasion narrative.
Exactly. The source notes articles began churning out across Europe and North America, warning ominously about a coming Chinese EV invasion, framing BYD's success as a threat.
BYD was increasingly portrayed not just as a competitor, but as a national security or economic threat, facing a wave of bad publicity that was hard to counter.
That's tough to fight. How were actual sales in Europe?
On top of this, their initial sales performance in the European market was described as abysmal, capturing only a tiny 1.1% of the market share in the early going.
Abysmal. Only 1%. Ouch.
The source provides crucial context for BYD's claim of global dominance. Yes, they were #1 globally in NEV sales, surpassing Tesla in total plug-in vehicle volume in 2023.
Right. #1 overall.
But China is by far the biggest car market in the world, and at this point, approximately 90% of BYD sales were inside China.
So 90% domestic sales. That changes the picture.
Experts and media outside China began questioning if BYD truly had what it takes, the brand appeal, the distribution, the cultural understanding to become a truly global brand outside of its protected home market.
The global brand challenge.
And the seemingly small but telling detail from the source highlights the cultural translation problem they faced in Europe. Many European buyers who did purchase BYD simply didn't like the "Build Your Dreams" slogan displayed prominently on the back of the cars.
The slogan again, Europeans didn't like it.
The source notes BYD ended up removing it from some models for the European market, and there were even social media videos posted by European owners showing how to physically remove the badge themselves.
People were scraping the slogan off. Wow.
What resonated as an aspirational, powerful message reflecting the founder's journey and China's rise didn't land the same way in many parts of Europe, where it felt perhaps naive or out of place.
Cultural differences matter.
The source summarizes that first year in Europe as horrible for BYD, characterized by struggling to understand customer tastes and facing hugely disappointing sales figures, proving that success in one market doesn't automatically translate.
And the challenges only grew, intensifying the headwinds. The source notes that the worst was yet to come, with the escalation of geopolitical tensions impacting trade.
Geopolitics, tariffs.
In September 2023, the European Union Commission officially launched a formal investigation into Chinese EV companies, including BYD, alleging they benefited from unfair government subsidies that distorted competition and proposing the potential imposition of significant tariffs on imported Chinese EVs.
The EU subsidy investigation, that's serious.
Chinese automakers found themselves increasingly caught in a geopolitical game, where their global ambitions were being threatened by international trade disputes and protectionism.
And what about the US market? Any progress there?
The problems BYD faced were described as even bigger in the United States. The source points to American media publishing scaremongering articles for years leading up to this, frequently portraying Chinese EVs not just as economic competitors, but as a potential national security threat.
National security threat.
because of the tech, due to embedded technology or data collection capabilities. This climate effectively shutting the doors to the US market for companies like BYD, making expansion there virtually impossible in the short to medium term.
So Europe investigating. US basically closed off. Tough times globally.
In the midst of this escalating international backlash and protectionism, BYD released a video intended to rally spirits and promote pride among Chinese automakers.
What was the message?
The source describes the video as celebrating the achievements of Chinese car brands, encouraging them to focus on becoming global quality brands, and urging them to crush the old myths and negative perceptions about Chinese manufacturing.
Crush the old myths. Okay. How was that received?
However, the source notes that Western media coverage widely interpreted this video and slogan as a declaration of war against Western car brands. The phrase "crush the old myths" was often translated and reported more aggressively as "demolish the old legends."
Demolish the legends? That sounds much more aggressive.
Leading to significant, huge media backlash and reinforcing the narrative of Chinese companies as an aggressive, threatening force. It seemed like everything BYD did or said internationally was being viewed through a negative, suspicious lens.
Lost in translation, maybe? Or just bad timing?
But, the source says, in the midst of these headwinds, help would come from an unexpected place.
Unexpected help? From where?
And that crucial unexpected help indeed came from a country in the global south, Brazil.
Brazil? How did Brazil help?
The source describes a key discussion that took place in 2023 between Brazil's newly elected president, Lula da Silva, and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Lula, whose background included being an old auto worker and union leader.
Lula knew the auto industry.
Deeply understood the importance of good, skilled auto manufacturing jobs for his country's economy. He specifically requested if a major Chinese company would be willing to take over a large Ford manufacturing plant in the state of Bahia that had been abandoned by the American automaker a few years prior.
Take over an abandoned Ford plant.
Leaving thousands jobless. After internal discussions and evaluating the opportunity, the offer was presented to BYD, and they decided, despite the challenges elsewhere, to go for it.
BYD takes the Ford plant in Brazil. Interesting move.
The source notes this move was met with a largely positive reception in Brazil. The Brazilian press reported favorably on BYD's commitment to investing and creating jobs, and the state of Bahia even produced a public welcome video for the company.
A welcome video, nice change from the backlash elsewhere.
Signifying a genuinely positive environment for their expansion. The dream of becoming a truly global car brand, though facing setbacks in the West, was still very much alive through this embrace in the global South.
So a foothold in South America, did it pay off?
And the results in Brazil were significant, validating the strategic move. That same year, 2023, BYD didn't just gain a foothold. They took a staggering 72% share of the Brazilian EV market.
72%. Domination.
Dominating the segment almost overnight. This was the crucial point, the tipping scale that made them officially surpass Tesla as the best-selling pure electric car company in the world by volume.
So Brazil put them over the top to beat Tesla globally.
Finally achieving that ambitious goal first predicted by Wang way back in 2007.
And here's a fascinating, almost poetic cultural note from the source that highlights the difference in reception compared to Europe. The Brazilians, it seems, didn't mind the "Build Your Dreams" slogan on the cars at all.
Really? They liked the slogan. Why the difference?
The source speculates that perhaps, as a country in the global south, there was a deeper understanding and resonance with that aspirational message, the idea of building a better future through hard work and technology. It seems this resonated much more broadly in many global south countries than it did in the more established, perhaps more cynical Western markets.
Interesting. The message landed differently.
The source includes some incredibly heartwarming and revealing details about customer experiences in delivery videos from countries like India, Indonesia, and Thailand, where BYD is also finding success.
What did the videos show?
These videos show people who are extremely happy and proud when receiving their new BYD car. You see entire families involved in the delivery, dealerships putting celebratory ribbons on the cars, people dressing up and taking formal photos with their new vehicle.
Like a major life event.
And in some cases, even bringing local priests to bless the car, reflecting the deep cultural significance of owning a vehicle and embracing new technology.
Priests blessing the car. That shows how much it means.
This points to a much deeper significance than just a car purchase. The source points out that an electric car not long ago was seen as something largely reserved for the Tesla buying rich people.
Right, EVs were expensive.
A premium, expensive, aspirational product out of reach for most. But BYD, through their cost-effective manufacturing and strategic pricing, managed to make quality EVs for people that would otherwise never have been able to afford them.
Making EVs accessible, democratizing the tech, maybe.
And that gives those customers a powerful, almost emotional feeling, the feeling that they are finally part of the future, that they can access this cutting-edge technology that was previously out of reach. The source calls this a very powerful feeling of empowerment and inclusion.
Being part of the future.
Selling not just a car, but a tangible piece of a brighter, cleaner future to a much broader demographic.
And the source notes a touching detail. Wang Chuanfu himself frequently participates in BYD car deliveries, especially for significant or symbolic customers.
Wang himself shows up.
This suggests that perhaps he, more than most, knows what it means to come to a place where you feel that the future is bright. Remembering his own journey from profound poverty in Anhui to leading a global technology company.
Connecting his past to these customers' present.
There's a direct line from his past to the feeling his customers in emerging markets experience today. It truly brings us back to those full-circle moments that the source highlights throughout the story.
Like what?
BYD went from meticulously reading patent applications and relying on designs resembling Toyota's for inspiration to now actually helping Toyota itself produce electric and hybrid vehicles through joint ventures and battery supply.
From copying Toyota to helping Toyota.
Oh, and they went from being openly ridiculed and laughed at on live television by Elon Musk to now being the company that surpassed Tesla in global EV sales volume and, ironically, supplying the very batteries for some of his cars through their battery arm, FinDreams.
Supplying batteries to Tesla after Musk laughed at them. That's irony.
One of Wang Chuanfu's earliest and staunchest supporters throughout this entire improbable journey was Charlie Munger. The source reiterates Munger's deep admiration for Wang and the company, describing his investment in BYD as a great privilege, recognizing the extraordinary achievement.
Munger really believed in them.
The source includes a powerful quote from Munger during a 2019 Berkshire Hathaway investor meeting, specifically praising Wang's older brother as a true hero who, Munger said, sacrificed everything so his little brother could have a chance to escape poverty and fulfill his potential.
Praising the brother's sacrifice. That's amazing. Munger knew that detail.
Munger called this selfless act Confucianism in action, and Wang's ultimate achievement in building BYD against all odds, a miracle. High praise indeed from a man who weighs his words carefully.
A miracle. High praise from Munger. The source does briefly mention another company from a country with a communist party, VinFast from Vietnam.
VinFast, right. Making waves too.
Also making headlines and entering the US market with EVs, noting it as another example of ambitious companies from unexpected places making waves globally. But as you said, that's a story with its own complexities for another deep dive.
Indeed. The BYD story itself is packed with enough drama, unlikely turns, and strategic pivots to keep anyone captivated.
So what are the core takeaways, the key nuggets of insight we can extract from this incredibly detailed journey traced in our source?
Yeah, let's boil it down.
From Wang Chuanfu's impoverished beginnings, marked by profound personal tragedies during the Cultural Revolution, through founding a company with almost no capital and facing immense skepticism, entering the cutthroat automotive market against all advice and suffering through financial collapse and public ridicule,
The rock bottom moments.
strategically rethinking their entire approach, surviving a global pandemic by pivoting to making masks, innovating game-changing battery technology, revamping their brand image, facing significant global blowback and geopolitical challenges,
The recent headwinds.
and finally finding crucial volume-driving success in markets like the Global South to ultimately become the world leader in pure electric car sales by volume.
Phew, what a ride. So the takeaways.
The core insights are powerful lessons in business and life. It shows the sheer power of perseverance and relentless determination in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles and repeated setbacks.
Never giving up, basically.
It highlights strategic adaptation, leveraging unique local advantages like abundant manual labor for cost savings, the foresight of aggressive vertical integration from the start,
Thinking differently about manufacturing.
and the flexibility to pivot dramatically, like they did during the pandemic, or revamp their product design when the initial approach failed. It underscores resilience, the ability to survive financial crises, public humiliation, and global downturns by focusing on the fundamentals and long-term vision.
Resilience is key. And finding opportunity in overlooked or dismissed areas.
Absolutely. Initially seizing the vacuum left by Japan's exit from nickel-cadmium batteries, then recognizing the potential of LFP batteries and vertical integration when others focused elsewhere.
Seeing what others missed.
And more recently, finding massive volume-driving success in global South markets when doors were closing or proving difficult in the West.
Going where the growth is, even if it's not the traditional markets.
Finally, it shows the profound impact of loyalty and belief, from the foundational sacrifices of Wang's family and early colleagues to the unwavering support of key investors like Charlie Munger.
The human element, trust and loyalty.
These human elements, this network of trust and belief, clearly played a significant, perhaps even essential, role in the company's ability to endure the darkest moments and ultimately succeed against all odds.
So how is this incredible story relevant to you, listening to this deep dive?
Well, it's a vivid, real-world story about overcoming massive, systemic obstacles through sheer will and smart strategy. It shows that success can be found in unexpected places, using unconventional methods, and by relentlessly challenging conventional wisdom.
Don't follow the crowd, necessarily.
It's a powerful illustration of the vast difference between initial perception, the copycat, the gamble, the company that was laughed at, and eventual reality, the global leader.
Perception versus reality, a big theme here.
And it fundamentally reflects the rapidly changing landscape of global industries like automotive, where established players can be disrupted by agile newcomers from seemingly unlikely backgrounds using different rulebooks. It challenges the assumptions about where innovation comes from and who can lead on the global stage.
The game is changing.
Consider this provocative thought. The story of BYD, born from intense hardship, built on unconventional foundations like leveraging manual labor for efficiency and deep vertical integration from day one, fundamentally challenges the traditional narrative of global industry leadership typically dominated by established players from developed economies.
Right. The usual suspects aren't the only players anymore.
With geopolitical tensions rising and global South markets proving increasingly crucial to global volume and growth, what does BYD's remarkable, improbable success story truly tell us about the future of manufacturing, innovation, and global competition?
Good question.
What profound lessons can we learn from a company whose founder literally aimed to build your dreams and against all logic, all criticism, and all setbacks actually did it?
It certainly gives you a lot to think about how quickly the world and its leaders can change.
Indeed it does.
Absolutely. And that's a wrap on this deep dive into the unlikely rise of BYD. We hope you feel a little more informed and perhaps a lot more surprised by the true story behind the headlines of the world's largest electric vehicle company.